Hello Stargazers, Bryan Colter here for another horoscope video for the upcoming Virgo full moon from the Evolutionary Astrology perspective. Before we get to the analysis though, I have a couple quick announcements to make. For anybody that wants to skip forward to the meat of this presentation, I'll put a timestamp below at the top of the comment section. So the last YouTube video we did was actually a live stream. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. I think some of you did too. I've decided to do this one pre-recorded. And I'm not sure how many live streams I want to do. I'm still trying to figure that out. As you know, many of you know, I'm making some changes on this channel. I have a suspicion that the YouTube algorithms like the pre-recorded videos rather than the live ones more. So anyways, I'm going to have to figure that out. But in regards to live calls, I actually have 4 of them scheduled this month for my new Patreon community. So that's a big announcement that just opened this month, and it's not too late to join if you're interested, because I saved all the live calls, all 4 of them, in the last half of the month. I'll put a link below in the show description. I'll be doing a live guided meditation where we'll also be talking about mysticism and spirituality, which is perfect to do during this Neptune conjunct Jupiter time that we all find ourselves in. I'll be doing a more in-depth horoscope than what we're doing here, where I'll be applying them to the different houses of people by their rising sign. So it'll be a much more personalized horoscope, which again will be live, so live interaction with me. And then for those of you who want to learn evolutionary astrology with me, I also have a chart analysis where myself and fellow patrons will look at their charts and really dive deeply into them and learn astrology, learn how to read charts. And then at the very top tier, I have basically my inmost circle of apprentices, where my goal will be to try to download my brain into them and teach them everything I know. So if you really want to invest in your education and learn this style of astrology, that's an option too. Also, I have a Neptune intensive workshop coming up on the day will be April 10th, and it will be at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I know it's a little awkward for you West Coasters, but hey, I'm in Portugal, so we have to find a compromise here. So I'll be teaching everything Neptune, which I have Neptune conjunct my sun, so it's an archetype I know a lot about. And in celebration of the Jupiter-Neptune event, which happens technically on April 12th, just a couple days later, we'll be talking about everything Neptune in your chart, which really represents the focal point of your spiritual evolution. And I'll be calling this workshop Unlocking Your Inner Mystic. So that'll be a lot of fun. I'm telling you the date so you can mark it on your calendar if you're interested. It's not actually for sale yet, so I will provide the links on the next YouTube video. It'll be on sale before the event, and then it'll be normal price after the event. And then lastly, I announced this before, I just want to say it again, I'm no longer doing guided meditations on my YouTube videos. However, I'm still doing them as companions for these horoscope updates, but I'm just uploading them in a different location. So they're now on my podcast. There'll be links for that below as well. And I have a beautiful meditation for the set of energies we're working with. All right, now that we got the announcements out of the way, let's dive into the fun part. Okay, so let's bring up the chart here. There it is. And as you can see, this is a crescent shape icon here. This is the moon. So moon opposite the sun. This is a Virgo full moon. And we're going to talk a lot about Virgo here. But first, I want to take a step back and look at the big picture. You know, what are the major events? You know, moon is always important to work with, but it's the more quicker moving personal planets, which we want to apply those evolutionary intentions to the larger framework that's happening. So as you look here, the eye grabber, of course, is this big fat rolling stellium in Pisces. You know, you have Mercury and Jupiter and Neptune and the sun all in this sign as we try to wrap up Pisces season. Because just in a few days, the sun will be leaving Pisces and entering the Aries season. So we're trying to wring out as much potential as we can from this Piscean archetypal field. But not only that, you know, this is the headliner. 2022, you know, there's other stuff going on, but the headliner is Neptune-Jupiter conjunction. Now, Neptune and Jupiter, you know, it's not really a rare event. I mean, they come together in the sky about once every 13 years or so. So it's not that rare. But what makes this one rare and special is that it is happening in Pisces. And Pisces is a sign that is said to have two planets that rule it, dual rulership. The more classical understanding of rulership, which is Jupiter, and the more modern one, which is Neptune. So both the planets that rule this sign in their own sign, effectively on steroids, and they're holding hands in the sky. This conjunction happens officially April 12th, but we're feeling it super strong now because they're 5 degrees apart, as you can see, and Jupiter's moving fast. So it's known as an applying conjunction, which is the strongest one when it's applying. So the last time they came together in Pisces was 1856, long time ago. And we could say the high-end evolutionary intention of working with these planets when they come together is spiritual evolution. So we could call this period of time a spiritual renaissance, potentially. Of course, it doesn't feel that way with, the crises that are going on the planet right now. But spiritual development is the highest octave expression of this planetary combination. So 1856, what was going on then? Well, that was when we had the advent of spiritualism. It became very, very popular then. The idea of the continuity of consciousness really shifted then, okay? It's like when we die, we're not dead. That's, of course, a religious concept that a lot of religions agree with. But what was really unique about it is we started talking about ghosts and the astral plane, the fourth dimension, when mediumship became very popular. So the question is, will we see a similar pulse this year? The first time this is happening since 1856, where there becomes a collective interest in the metaphysical mysteries of life. Okay, the archetypes support this idea quite strongly. How will it manifest? If it manifests, I don't know, but I'm keeping my eyes peeled to see what pops up. Okay, so these planets, of course, very Piscean in nature. The archetypes associated with Pisces is the mystic, the dreamer, the poet, okay? So this really highlights the mystical and spiritual dimensions of these planets. Now, that's the high end. Of course, we'll see plenty of the low end, that we can manifest any of these archetypes in an evolved way or an unevolved way. And the more we work on the more virtuous side of these archetypes, the faster we grow and evolve. The more we work on the lower octave expressions, let's say, the more our growth is slowed. And the shadow side of these two planets here is escapism, basically, addiction, delusion. Okay, these are connected to some of the more crazy responses, or falling victim to illusions or mirages or deception. Okay, so it's always going to be a mixed bag. We'll see a lot on both sides of the spectrum. And this creates a dramatic theme. Okay, so we'll see the good, the bad, and the ugly, as always. So it's important to know about the ugly, what's going on, so we know what to not work with ourselves, but also develop a more compassionate awareness about some of the struggles we see others having that are, it's like, oh, okay, I can see where, somebody is stumbling with this, Neptune, Jupiter, and Pisces. So, there is a distinction between Jupiter and Neptune. These are very different planets. They share the same rulership. I think a good way to enter into this is to make the distinction between Pisces folk, people who are carrying these energies so strongly. Some Pisces will be the more Jupiterian version of Pisces people. Some Pisces will be the more Neptunian version of Pisces people. Now, the more Jupiterian Pisces people, which you can distinguish by looking at their birth chart, besides just observing qualities of their character, if you see they're a Pisces, but they have a stronger Jupiter than a Neptune, it stands to reason that they're probably a more Jupiterian type, which Jupiter people tend to be more jovial. The word summarizes that. Jupiter people tend to say yes to life. They laugh a lot. They're huggy people, especially the Pisces ones, So they're loving. Pisces is really good at loving, sometimes unconditionally loving. with this Jupiterian big-spiritedness, okay? So there's more enthusiasm associated with the Jupiterian Pisces people. Say yes to life, okay? Makes me think of that Jim Carrey movie, I think, was it called Yes Man? Something like that, okay? And that's a more extreme version of it, obviously. And then the Neptunian Pisces people, it's about letting go of attachment. It's about forgiveness. It's about transcendence of the flesh. It's about surrender. These are the true mystics. It's about deep consciousness. And sometimes these folks become very suspicious of the ego, or anything that attaches us to this world. Okay, so it's a different energetic texture, both on the Piscean wavelength, but one is more Jupiterian, one is more Neptunian. Okay, so that's more talking on a personal level. How do we take this same concept or idea and apply it to the evolutionary intention of working with this conjunction in our personal life, but also amidst the collective here? Well, all aspects, okay, and conjunctions are about integration. They're about synthesis, okay? So how do you bring yes and no together in your head? One says yes to life. One is about removing something in life to focus on consciousness exploration. Okay, how can you reconcile these opposites? That's the question pressing at us. And of course, which is the faster path to raising one's consciousness? That's an essay question, So that's really the heart of the matter to this event. What do I need to release so I can raise my consciousness? And what do I need to say yes to? What do I need to claim? That's the more Jupiter side of it, okay? Now, this is focused, of course, on spiritual development. So what do I need to say yes to and claim? What do I need to remove? That is slowing my evolution in this lifetime. So both sides of that, now you can add a deeper level of specificity to those questions by recognizing, okay, where is Jupiter and Neptune transiting through my chart? Now, how you tell the houses of the chart is this inner ring in the middle here, 1 through 12. These are the houses. So you find out, okay, where's Pisces in my chart? And then you know that the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction is happening in that area of your chart. And then you can think about, okay, this is what this house means. How can I take this idea of yes and no and apply them both to this house? Now, if you don't know what the houses mean, I do sell, $15 tutorial on my website. I'll put a link below. But also in that Patreon announcement, I have a new Patreon. I'll be doing a more in-depth horoscope where I will talk about all the houses, and based on your rising sign, we can gain some more information there. Now, some will get this energy really right. They'll really have it as a focal point in their daily walk of life. And there's a potential for them to become spiritual lighthouses in their community, where they can have a guiding role to others as they lead by example, but even through what they share. Now, obviously, there's more going on than just this, although, again, this is the headliner. The question is, can we become focused on our spiritual development when there's crazy energy going on too? You have these 3 planets in Aquarius, Pluto and Capricorn nearby. They're in a loose square aspect, a friction-based aspect to Uranus and the north node of the moon. This is really highlighting the Saturn-Uranus square that we were experiencing all through 2021. We're experiencing it this year as well. The triggering influence of Mars and Venus playing a big role here, sharing the same sign of Aquarius. I've been talking about Venus and Mars the last few videos. Divine masculine, Mars, divine feminine, Venus coming together, holding hands, igniting the passions of the world. Of course, a lot of that will be sexual passions too, but just passionate about something. Okay. Now, when Mars hit Pluto, that's when the war started. Mars is the king of all the triggering planets. So that passionate energy, the god of war and conflict, Mars, hit a conjunction with Pluto, the god of hell. Okay, so there was the trigger. And the passions are still high, Venus and Mars next to each other. They're starting to separate. Venus is moving a lot faster than Mars now, but the conjunction's very active during this full moon. And passions are on high typically during full moons because moon is heart, it is soul, it's our emotional world. So during full moons, we tend to be more reactive. I am generalizing here, obviously. Some will illustrate this more than others. We combine that with the passion, highlighting the Saturn-Uranus square, which is the major themes of restriction, contraction, blockage, limitation, loneliness, depression. These are very negative aspects or challenging aspects of Saturn, is at cross purposes with the square to the more freedom impulses available to us. Liberation, the Uranus, the great awakener. So these two planets have been really in this tension-based dance the last year or so, and this is highlighted now. So can we focus on our spiritual development as there's so much heat in the air? That's a core question. Now, that's generalizing the Saturn-Uranus on a more collective level, but on a more personal level, when we're looking at it where it is in our charts, Saturn is always where we want to apply hardworking energy. It's the gateway to deeper levels of maturation. Every culture that's had astrology, Saturn's represented as the old guy or the wizard archetype. So it represents wisdom. So the great prize of working with Saturn, especially if it's touching a planet in your birth chart, that's when you really want to take a look at it. It's like, okay, this is a growth-inducing experience. Now, usually the means to that end is that you have to go through a little bit of hardship or challenge, because Saturn can be challenging. So we can look at Saturn, broadly speaking, as it's presenting, when it hits a planet in your chart, a great work for you. Okay. And of course, it's squaring Uranus. So part of that great work is more liberation in the sense of your own individuality, who you are in your heart of hearts and your souls of souls, instead of who you've been trained to be by culture and family. So the great work of individuating. Okay. Now it gets more complex than that. It depends on where it is in your chart and all that. But, when we focus on it on a more personal level, it's like, how can I resist the coercions of culture, maybe family too, who have been subconsciously or maybe consciously affecting us with psyops, trying to get us to act differently. And of course, as passions are on high, the nodes of the moon, south nodes in Scorpio, okay? Passions are on high. People's woundedness is coming up. People are very strong in what they believe, and they want others to believe as they believe. So, it's like Uranus is saying, the hell with all that. Allow me to be myself. It's that freedom instinct. So that's all happening in the background. Meanwhile, big fat stellium in Pisces takes the cake. This is the primary goal. So can we raise our consciousness amidst the chaos? Can we rest within the eye of the storm? And can we have a level of clarity about what we should claim and what we should remove from our life to help us do that? Now, what about the Virgo full moon? It's like, okay, this is needs to be talked about, of course. What jumped out at me right away as I was preparing for this presentation was that, wow, this full moon is a part of this grand trine here. You see this big fat triangle in the middle? The moon in Virgo is in a near perfect trine to Pluto and Capricorn, and it's in a very tight trine to the North Node in Taurus. And grand trines the potential is beautiful, but it's not automatically activated when it's interacting with the North Node, because the North Node is just a neutral point. It's nothing but a good idea. It's really healthy for us to work with, okay, but it doesn't have a charge to it. It's an invitation, but you got to work with it proactively. North Node is hard work too, because it feels more foreign in that moment. It feels more exotic. So this beautiful grand trine does not activate unless we're really looking to work with Taurus. And Taurus serves as the antidote for this darker motivation of Scorpio right now, which is psychodrama, basically, and temper tantrums and our wounds rising to the surface. And Taurus is saying it's more simple than that. Let's not focus on the complexity of our traumas. They're real, they're there, we can work with them, but let's not get totally lost in those trigger point emotions, as I like to call them. And let's go in the present moment. That's Taurus, the simplicity of breath, of nature, the present moment. Let's put our peace in mind, try to develop more peace within our body, okay? And if we're able to do that, then the trine is activated, and of course it has a positive impact on this Piscean motivation, because as you can see, this North Node in Taurus is in a beautiful sextile aspect, which is a positive aspect. It's supportive to this Neptune-Jupiter. So you see all these blue lines in the middle? These are very positive. A lot of trines, a lot of sextiles. You know, you have this square, of course, which I already highlighted, so it's not devoid of tension. But I really love this full moon. It's juicy. Now, first thing I want to point out with this grand trine, of course, the prerequisite of working with Taurus to activate it, but it's in earth signs, so it's an earth grand trine. Words that go along with earth signs is responsibility, duty, practicality, ownership. Okay. So I like the idea of taking ownership of our traumas. You know, and I'm using traumas here specifically because the full moon's in a sextile to that Scorpio South node, which I already referenced, but it's also part of the grand trine is Pluto. Pluto rules Scorpio. Pluto, the lord of the underworld, which is a metaphor for our repressed and suppressed emotions, basically. And here it is, part of this grand trine. The road to find inner peace is to take accountability and responsibility for our own shadows and to do our shadow work. Okay? Now, a lot of our shadows and our woundedness is because other people have hurt us and we've been a victim in that situation. Of course, victim's not a word I use a lot, but, it's bad shit happens on planet Earth. It's just part of existing here. Pardon my French, but, bad things happen to good people and we get traumatized from those. However, we want to take ownership, which is that good earthy word, accountability, take responsibility for our own psychic garbage cans, for our own repressed and suppressed emotions, and then work on those in Virgoan fashion with a high attention to detail. Virgo is the virgin archetype, which has nothing to do with sexuality, but the idea of purity, a state of purity. Here is what is, here is what should be. Okay? So strive for perfection in your unconsciousness and your subconsciousness. That's a very evolved way to work with this grand trine. Okay? But the goal being to establish inner peace. Okay? Now, I'm doing I did a guided meditation. And I uploaded it on my podcast. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, among others. So if you want to do a daily meditation in companion with this full moon, set a strong intention of basically reprogramming your consciousness. I love that way of phrasing that because if you think about computer programmers, for example, they're of a very specific kind of mind, and I haven't looked at a lot of birth charts of computer programmers, but I would imagine I would see a repeating theme of a lot of air energy in their charts, a strong Mercury, a strong Uranus, and also a lot of strong Virgos, because Mercury rules Virgo as well as the air signs. So a lot of Virgo energy there, and it's like high attention to detail. Let's reprogram and let's figure out how we can work on our subconscious and find where there's any limitations to the development of our consciousness. So when we talk about the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction and something to take away, we leverage the perfectionist energy of Virgo to take away elements of our negative thought processes, our emotions that are negative, because that will just serve as a blockage for this beautiful spiritual renaissance period that we find ourselves in. So, I really like this particular cocktail of planets. It's really beautiful just on a more mathematical level, but just on a symbolic archetypal level. But it's always the eye on the prize, the cherry on top for this year, which is happening right now, and it'll be strongest next month. I'm doing that Neptune intensive workshop on April 10th. So if you're interested, I will have that available on my website for my next video in a couple weeks. So these are the core evolutionary intentions, with the goal being to expand our consciousness. Thank you.